Monster by Walter Dean Myer is a book about Steve Harmon's experience in jail and on trial.
Did that scare you? Probably not, but we can all agree that it was a monster. In our world, there are two types of monsters, figurative and literal. Literal monsters are the things with long claws and fangs, the things that hunt you down in the night. Vampires, werewolves, clowns that dance in sewer drains and lure children with balloons. These are what we usually think of when someone says the word monster.
The other category, figurative monsters, aren't scary looking. They don't hide under beds or inside closets. These monsters are even more terrifying. They're frightening because they're real. They look and act just like us, and it's almost impossible to tell the difference. Steve Harmon falls under this category.
What made Steve into a monster is debatable. Some say it was his own narcissism. Others think it occurred when he decided to assist in the robbery of a drugstore. We believe that he truly became a monster when he became selfish, envious, tractable, and greedy.
Throughout the book, Steve keeps talking about how he isn't thinking about other people and only cares about himself. On page 90, in a journal entry he writes, quote, "I think about myself so much, about what's going to happen to me and all, that I don't think about my own folks that much." End quote. Steve doesn't even seem to care what anyone, even his own parents, feel.
Steve repeatedly stated that he looked up to King. On page 96, Steve admitted that he wanted to be like him. He said, quote, "All the times I had looked at him and wanted to be tough like him." End quote. Steve idolized the characteristics of King that caused him to commit the crime, which convinced Steve to help with the robbery.
While still a 16-year-old, Steve became more accustomed to prison life. On page 62, Steve mentioned Lynch, a guy who was going on trial for killing his wife. Everyone wanted to talk to him and pretend they were good guys, when in reality they were still criminals. Lynch said, quote, "It's too late to put up your holy front now," end quote. Steve responded with, quote, "In a way he was right, at least about me. I want to look like a good person. I want to feel like a good person because I believe I am. But being in here with these guys makes it hard to think about yourself as being different." End quote. He believed that he was like the prisoners and therefore started embracing it.
Steve longed for freedom and was willing to do anything, even lie, to achieve it. On page 223, Steve was asked if he had, quote, "discussed with anyone that you would act as a lookout or that you would check out the store," end quote. He testified that, quote, "No, I did not," end quote. Back on page 80, Steve was hanging out with Osvaldo. Osvaldo said, quote, "He's just a lame looking for a name. When the deal goes down, you won't be around," end quote. This proves that Steve was lying about not being involved. He obviously talked with Osvaldo about the stick-up beforehand.
So what really made Steve a monster? Was he born a monster, or did he grow up to be one? In the end, it was the trial itself and his time in prison that turned him into a selfish, envious, and greedy monster.